Hello and welcome to another BuildASoil product highlight video. Today we've got one of our most popular products, and it's kind of hard to tell from here. We're actually working on the full printed bag, but it's called BuildAFlower Top Dress. And so I'd imagine if you're watching this video, you might be curious like when you would use this product, when you shouldn't use the product. Also, you might be wondering like how we make it, what's inside it, why is BuildAFlower BuildAFlower? And so I'd like to answer those questions for you today as we do a product highlight. What's important for me is that I want you to have the same experience if you're online and you want to watch a video like this. I want you to have that same experience as if you were talking to me in person and trying to understand more about the product. And unfortunately, I can't be at all the grocery stores and online all the time to explain it. And so someone brand new may come off Google or watch a YouTube video, land here and go, BuildAFlower, okay. Well, what's the difference between that and like a bag of worm castings? And how do I know when to use it? And so for me, it's super important that I at least do a little bit deeper dive and explain it. And then you can decide, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe this is the right time to use the product. And then what I've found to be true is if we educate and you use it at the proper times, you don't waste money when you shouldn't use it with any product, then you're likely to succeed, which means that you're likely to come back. And so BuildASoil has been around for well over a decade now. And the reason I think we've had longevity in a really crazy volatile market is because we focus on teaching the fundamentals. And then once the consumer, once the customer, once the grower is educated, they're able to independently verify that our products are really that good. And so it goes hand in hand together. So let's jump in right away. What is BuildAFlower? I've got the list of ingredients. Now, we've made changes over the years. And so what I think is important is that I at least go over the current ingredients. And what I mean by making changes is we might change a particular way that we derive an ingredient on the soil test. But it's important to us that it's balanced for a certain purpose. And so you can see our batch tests on the BuildAFlower. We don't do them as often as a soil test because it's not a complete soil. It is more of a recipe that we test when we make any changes. And so you can see these online. And I'll tell you kind of what we target on here and how it works. But I'd like to go over the current ingredients. Of course, check the website for the most current list. And then of course, the packaging will be up to date as soon as we make changes and put it in the new bag. As far as ingredients go, the two most important ingredients in BuildAFlower, and it's always been this way, has been a really premium compost and a premium worm casting, vermicompost, if you will. The reason why we combine both is back in the day when we learned about living soil, we were taught that the best living soil, the best gardens that were following the organic methods, they've found a way to find really good premium compost, either making your own, sourcing it locally, and making thermophilic compost where you turn the pile and it activates and it turns into that beautiful brown, really smells good, earthy compost that we're used to. It's pretty hard to make, and you have to have a lot of material. You have to have a whole bunch of browns and greens that are clean sourced, and they have to be shredded or they have to be in smaller particle size, and then you have to turn the pile. And so that in itself is enough work where even if you have the land and the ability, not everyone always has access to really high quality compost. Then the next one is vermicompost. And vermicompost or worm castings can be sourced from many different places, and it could be used for recycling purposes, in which case the worms work a whole bunch of carbon-rich organic material and break it down, and you get whatever they ate. But when it comes to a quality garden, you want to source worm castings that are made for this purpose, not just to remediate waste, because we don't want any stuff in our worm castings in our garden that we wouldn't normally want in there. And so that's why the waste, like the trash reduction side, may not be as good. So our compost, the reason why I list premium compost is when you register in 50 states or whatever, you don't want to put like a brand name on here. And then if I have to switch because they go out of business, have to switch all of the registrations. And so it's easier to use the generic terms that they want us to use. So premium compost, to me, we've used several brands over the years. Right now, we're currently using Seacoast compost in the BuildAFlower because it tests low on heavy metals, high in the nutrients that we're after, and it's a beautiful compost. One thing that we do is we add extras to the compost and the worm castings, and we mix the two together. And so at home, normally you'd have to go find and source and know what you're looking for to find the best worm castings. The ones that we use in here are BuildASoil #1 worm castings. I also really like Colorado Worm Company, but our BuildASoil ones are very high in calcium and they're easy to mix and create a really good texture that I want for the BuildAFlower. And so you take our #1, our castings that are high calcium and are really balanced, but they're not supercharged in nutrient. And you take the Seacoast compost or a premium compost that's loaded in nutrients and usually not as high in calcium. And we combine the two together and then we send it to the lab. And then from there, we create a formula where I balance it with a premium gypsum, which balances the calcium to be really high. And part of the reason we do that is we want it to match our soil test profile, not perfectly, but we want it to be highest in calcium, and then next magnesium, next potassium, and then the lowest sodium. And so this follows all that, almost like a potting soil. You could probably plant into it, but it is potent. It is about 3 to 4 times as high as our 3.0 when it comes to the phosphorus and the potassium. And so this really is like a flowering bloom booster, no matter what type of plant, whether you're growing tomatoes, whether you're growing your own herbs, an indoor grow, outdoor grow. When you're using BuildAFlower, you're applying what will help in that shift over towards flowering and help with the fruiting and the energy. And so it's often known that really in living soil, you need everything. But when it comes to flowering, sometimes we're lacking that phosphorus energy or we're lacking that boost of potassium. And so this will contain both, but with a big balance of calcium. That's super important. And I think that's why people really keep coming back to the BuildAFlower, is it was designed with intent. The next thing that we add in there, we add our high phosphorus organic rice bran. In the past, we've used soft rock phosphate, we've used fishbone meal. The reason why we're using the bran is we want a way to activate the phosphorus with as low heavy metals as possible and really boost up the numbers so that it's above the potassium level. And this does a pretty good job of doing it. And it also really helps activate it when we mix the two together, and it heats up and it kind of comes alive. And so the BuildAFlower is mixed, it gets all warm and it homogenizes. And it's, in my opinion, better than just going out and trying to find a local wiggle worm bag or something like that, and then ordering and hoping that the compost is good. So we mix the two together, all right? And we add those amendments. The other thing that we add is a little bit of Thorvin Icelandic kelp meal. The reason that we do that is that's an integral part from the beginning, from Coot, as far as adding micronutrients in an organic way, was you take a tiny bit from the ocean. And so the Icelandic kelp meal is a really clean kelp meal, and we add a very small amount, and it adds a lot of trace minerals in there, and a little bit of, there's a little bit of texture that helps like bind everything together when there's a little bit of kelp meal in there. And so I really like what it adds. Then the last 2 ingredients that we add, I think, are really important into some of the quality. We add a pre-charged biochar that we make. It's one of our more popular products, and we actually put that pre-charged biochar with the root wise and with a little bit of aminos to help offset the high carbon that's in the biochar, and we mix that in here as well. And that raises the cation exchange capacity and helps hold on to the nutrients so that it's not like force feeding your plants, so that your plants can actively take from it instead of having to be taking up everything right when you top dress. So it makes it more slow release. We also add in a key component, and that is our mustard seed meal. The reason that we use the mustard seed meal in particular is that this particular mustard seed meal, they make in special proportion for us instead of their normal blend. And I tested a few varieties of it, but it's high in cinegrin, and it has a really noticeable, like spicy mustard when it gets wet, and that's an enzyme release. And so we mix it in here. It has all the benefits of a seed meal, being lower in metals, being nutritious, good high NPK as far as organics are concerned. And so that's why you feed seed meals to animals, like it's good nutrition. It's high in nutrient, but the mustard has that extra enzyme, and it kills any of the fungus gnat larvae. And you can research it, but it's also used for organic biofumigation and strawberry production and other things like that. The reason that's important to me is it biofumigates fusarium and other problem pathogenic species of like bacteria, fungi that could exist in compost. I'm not too worried about that, but the fact that it's an added benefit is great. When we use premium compost, we're not worried about getting any of those problems. However, cleaning it, what I've noticed when you do a mustard seed meal application to any compost or potting soil, it's like it resets all of the probiotics to just go wild with a clean slate and feed on the meal after that enzyme production is done. So the benefit is we're able to make this from 2 really premium composts, mix in the mustard seed, and so we never have gnats flying out of the bag, and it's a really good quality control step for us. And we can do that because we make it all in-house. We bring in every one of these ingredients. We quality control every single one. When we get the order, we inspect the material. We have quality control standards. We send it to the lab. We understand what our targets are. We have a set recipe. We have another building where we mix it all. And then we have a team that puts it in the bags, and we bring it over to our own fulfillment center where we ship it to you, so it's not in third-party hands and we don't know what's going on with it. The other way to get this is at your local grow store. And so it comes directly from our warehouse, directly to that grow store. We don't do like third-party fulfillment. And so I think all of those combined is probably why it's a bestseller, why there are, I think, over 1,000 5-star reviews on this one. I could be wrong, but this one has a lot of reviews on it, so go check that out. And then if you've used it and you haven't left a review, do it. It's like the more often that we get really positive reviews or just honest reviews, it helps set that information to the customer so they can make a good decision. And plus it makes me feel good when someone says, hey, here's a photo of my garden, thank you. I went over the content and the ingredients, right? I wanna kind of show you what it looks like here in my hands, just because it's hard to like show in the bag, but it's just a beautiful material. It's got some chunks of compost. It's got the fine worm castings. It smells really good. Now we take a lot of effort to control the moisture level on this through our standard process in the manufacturing. The other thing we do is we invest into bags that have a very specific size opening that are able to trap as much moisture as possible while still exchanging air so that there's no odor buildup. It's possible during the hottest months, there could be an extra little earthy odor on the BuildAFlower, but I really like it, especially with the bran and no fish product like being in there, like we used to use the fish bone meal, and then using the finished compost so it smells earthy already along with worm castings. That's another reason why I think it's one of the most popular. It just works across the board. It has a great odor. Other things to consider. How to use it, when to use it, when not to use it. And so BuildAFlower, why did we make something called BuildAFlower when it's compost mostly, right? Well, we've balanced it to be good for fruit and flower production. So it is the BuildAFlower, but it's not instant. It's not a water soluble. We do have our BuildABloom if you're looking for something water soluble. And we do have Organics Alive if you're looking for something pure water soluble without the calcium and the minerals. But when it comes to the BuildASoil way, we recommend a larger container of living soil. And we really want to install a mulch layer that includes soil amendments that are raw, like for the future, being broken down by the biology so the plants can take from the buffet instead of being force-fed. And if we mix it all in the soil, it might make the soil a little too rich. So we start with a premium living soil. We put amendment on top. In fact, last month, the product of the month was Craft Blend, and this month, the product of the month is BuildAFlower. And so these most often go together because people love the Craft Blend. It's got 15 ingredients. You can research that, but you put your amendments down. And a great thing in this natural style of growing is to then integrate compost or castings with your amendments right there in that mulch layer. And then the worms can bring it down, the feeder roots go up and access it. All the biology and moisture holding of the compost encases the natural amendment and allows it to get broken down. I think it's a huge plus as far as why this works so well. The other thing we typically do is use straw or some sort of mulch layer to cover it all. That keeps the moisture in the BuildAFlower. It breaks down the Craft Blend or whatever amendment you're using, and it allows for the worms to be shaded from the sun underneath that mulch and go break down and take that BuildAFlower and take the Craft Blend down. Now, if you're somewhere else in the world and you're watching this, a good worm casting, a good compost mixed together, and then using your favorite amendment, it's a go-to staple of making a mulch layer. Little added things that we did, like controlling any fungus gnat larvae by using the mustard seed meal, enriching the calcium, balancing the phosphorus. Those are standard process. I remember here in Montrose learning about some of the people that would farm for their family, and one of the resources that they would get locally oftentimes was there was a milk factory out here, and if they had the expired milk, they could get it and they would spread it on the garden. Well, now we use lacto, and of course milk has sugars and other things that feed the organisms. So that kind of came full circle. But another thing that would happen was they'd use manure, and they would add a bone meal. The bone meal adds the calcium in, and it adds the phosphorus in, and that's typically the things that would be missing from that manure, and also typically from what might be missing from a compost. A lot of times, although they say it's got excessive phosphorus, yes, some of the recycling plants that make like recycled city waste compost may have excessive phosphorus in it, but typically when I see like a normal high carbon woody and greens compost, you're not seeing lots of phosphorus unless those sources were in there to start. And so balancing that is really key to healthy production. And so that's what we did. We focused on those things when we made the BuildAFlower. And so without going too hard, I mean, this is a product highlight video, so I'm really supposed to drill down on it, but that's the main point of making BuildAFlower. And it actually stemmed from when we didn't have this product, people would message, and I was the only one at BuildASoil. I was out of my garage. And in my office, in the house, I would reply back and they'd say, what do I add when I'm going into flower? And we teach them about the mulch layer and how we want to load it with all the stuff required so that during flower it has access to it. And so they would say, well, can you just make that for me? That's where BuildAFlower came from. We were teaching already. We had the raw ingredients. We started mixing it. And in the beginning, we were mixing stuff like on a tarp. And so now we have some production. We have the ability to have a little batch mixer. It's still weighed by hand. It's still all artisanal, but we can do it properly so that it's really thoroughly mixed before we put it into the bag. Other things to consider, when not to use it, okay? When to use it, I like to set up a mulch layer right away in a new container. And then of course the plants are gonna grow through, whether it's vegetables or cannabis, like it's gonna grow through veg, you're gonna switch into flower and this will already be preloaded. If the plant's bigger, you can add more when you're needing it. But I don't like to get behind it in organics. This is compost, it's not magic. And so it still has to be broken down. It still has to be accessed by the roots. They have to grow into it. The moisture's gotta be done right. And so if for some reason you're seeing a deficiency in the plant that needs to be addressed immediately, I would look at something water soluble that you can get directly in there. However, I still think once you're addressing the immediate concern, you need to solve the cause of that, which was the lack of this in the soil. And so you're still gonna want a top dress. I just guess that I don't want you to use it when you're expecting an instant result. There is some water soluble nutrients you can see on the saturated paste test that will directly affect the plant fairly quickly, but it's not like watering nutrients in. So you could use our organic gem liquid fish. You could use Build-A-Bloom, Build-A-Veg, the Organics Alive line of fermented water soluble products. The gold standard of what we attempt to do is to have a large bed of soil, the plants not be exhausting it, and to set up a mulch layer, and that's where the BuildAFlower comes in. One other key place that people use it is if they want to brew a compost tea. Back in the day, we were really focused only on making a microbial compost tea. You'd use a microscope to inspect it. There's lots of arguments on what works, what doesn't work, the dissolved oxygen level. You'd have to calculate the temperature and what altitude you're at and all these things. And it was kind of silly because all these compost teas worked when you used good ingredients and you followed general practices. Some people would do like an extract instead of a tea. At the end of the day, one thing we noticed that did work is instead of just brewing a compost tea, you could throw some nutrients into it and brew more of a nutrient tea instead of focusing strictly on what the biology might do. And when you deployed it, you got really good results. And so people would add in a little bit of craft blend, or instead of just using like worm castings for their tea, they'd grab BuildAFlower and it'd have compost and castings and use that for their compost tea. So that's up to you. Not everyone uses compost teas, but those people that swear by compost teas, they get good results. And part of it's because the love and intention they put, how much planning it takes to make the tea and applying it. But I also think you're just putting really good stuff in very small amounts into the soil with the water. It makes sense to me. And so if you want to do that, we teach about it. And it's really basic. Anybody can make a compost tea, and this works great for that. So it serves lots of purposes. Other than that, applying it, how to, typically with the method of BuildASoil, you apply your amendment, you apply the BuildAFlower, you can mix the two together. I normally layer it, and then I integrate with my fingers into the top layer of soil so that the moisture moves into it properly. It's integrated. I don't want like layers where the moisture doesn't know how to act. And the other thing is I want it to have contact underneath the mulch. So I wiggle it all in so that it does stay moist. You don't want it to dry out. Typically what I do is I put like a thin layer, maybe a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch, up to 1 inch thick, depending on what I'm planting. It might be, some potatoes or something fast growing and I really want to add some organic matter in there, and I kind of put a whole bag on the bed and I just let it stay thick, and normally that's enough. It could be that I'm putting a thin 1/4 inch layer just to integrate some amendments and I want to add more and more later. The idea though is to put a surface layer of the compost. You could always put some in the planting hole outside, but typically I use this more in the mulch layer than directly in the root zone, as our style already has a great root zone going when we're using a homemade potting soil or like a 3.0 recipe from BuildASoil. So that's how you use it. The directions are online. You can always reach out. We've got great help team here. I went over the ingredients. I went over some of our process, how we mix it here on site. We don't like buy it from someone else. It's pretty rare these days, especially in agricultural, like gardening products. Most people just white label. And so we mix this on site. We ship it from our own facility, so we know all the quality control steps. It is the compost and castings. We went over all the amendments, and you can check out all the reviews. There are a lot of them if you go to the website. But people say that it really helps improve their flower quality. They're noticeably denser. They smell louder. I'd say it's a really high repeat customer purchase. So that means that people, once they see the benefit, they get a really good result and they just keep coming back. Maybe you're one of those people and that's why you're watching this video, to figure out like what makes this stuff work so well. Maybe you're brand new to BuildASoil. You don't know who to trust yet. And so you're researching, finding out who's real, what's what. And that's part of why I talk about that we make this ourselves, that we send it to the lab, that we've been doing this for over a decade. Because I want you to be able to trust it, and plus we guarantee it. If for some reason you're not happy, we've got a 60-day guarantee. You can reach back out to us. And I don't ever expect that to happen, but I just want to remove any like hesitation that you might have as a new customer. And if you join the BuildASoil way and you get some products and you have questions, we have a whole team of people that can help. And we make videos like this to help support you so that you can understand what you're putting into your garden for you and your family. So if you like videos like this, please subscribe. We do a lot of other content besides product highlights. And if you think that this might help someone, share it with them. Subscribe to the channel, please. Like this, comment on here, ask questions. If there's something that I missed that you want answered about BuildAFlower, I am here to make sure that you have the best results, that you fully understand with transparency what we do. And so I'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much. And until next time, I will see you on the next product highlight video.